Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith Whalen from RPI. I want to thank you for taking the time to attend today's webinar on performance and goal, bobbing for goals and performance. Two great presenters today, Ms. Jackie Dudas and Ms. Melissa Olson. I will hand off to them in just a second. First, a couple of housekeeping items. One, we will be recording this session. It does take us about a week to prepare it and upload it to YouTube. We'll send you an email once it's out there and you can share it and review it later. Also, we encourage questions. Mr. Bill Getty is manning the GoToMeeting questions module. So if you put him in there, he'll try to ask them as time allows. And with that, I give you Melissa and Jackie.
Thanks, Keith. So like he said, today we're going to be going over performance and goals, two modules within the Global HR application.
So if you don't know anything about us, which I hope you do, because I think a lot of you come to a lot of our webinars, we are RPI consultants. We've been in the Lawson space since 1999, and we are an alliance partner with Infor. We started out in Baltimore, Northeast, but we have consultants all over the U.S. and clients all over the U.S.
This is our agenda, what we're going to be going over today. We're first going to do a quick overview of GHR in case you haven't really heard about it or learned about it, or maybe you just purchased it and it's still sitting on the shelf, you haven't started using it yet. We're just going to touch on a little bit of terminology to kind of acquaint you with some things we might say down later in the presentation so that it makes sense. And then we're going to go over goal management, again, hit some terminology, and then the different types of goals you can set up and things you can do with the goals. And then we're going to do the same exact thing with performance management.
Hey, so kind of switched up this slide here. Usually we define what's in Global HR. I'll kind of talk about that for a sec. But this is straight from Inforum. This is kind of the new cloud suite solution that Infor is offering now. So what we are going to be talking about lies under this talent management portion. Your core Global HR is what runs your HRAS. This is where your person record is. This is where your new benefits and absence modules are. It includes the employee relations module. It includes occupational health and a safety management module. All of those are part of the core HR. What we're talking about today, performance and goal management, is under talent management. So it kind of helps you understand where things fall on this spectrum of product offerings.
And in addition, a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about that you set up for use in goals and performance are built in the Global HR side. So here's some Global HR pieces. Again, just some terminology we want you to get used to so that you're familiar when we're saying these Global HR terms. This is kind of a way to relate it back to S3. So the first thing is your HR 11 employee record. That now becomes your resource record. And the reason being is you can now have not just employees, but any kind of resource that your organization employs tracked in the system. So volunteers, contractors, and employees, all of the above. Your company, process level, and department, they now translate into your organization, which is your company, and then anything below that level becomes organization units, and you can set up different levels. You aren't just limited to these 3 levels. You can set up, I believe, infinity levels of an organization unit. Your jobs and positions, while you still do have to create jobs and positions, once you assign them to the employee or to the resource, they become work assignments. Your status, so an employee's status, instead of just being A1 active full-time, you now have 3 components that make up an employee's status. So the first one is relationship to org. That would be employee, volunteer, contractor. The relationship status is active or inactive. And then the work type would be like full-time, part-time, intermittent, that sort of thing. And then lastly, we have the supervisor in S3 is now the direct supervisor role in Global HR. And this just means that there are different types of supervisors within Global HR. You can have the upline supervisor. You can have different supervisors who only perform different tasks for each employee or resource. So
like performance and goals.
Yes, exactly, which we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah.
So on to the next. These are just functional differences, so kind of like different processes. Personal actions in S3 are now action requests. Your 2 self-services become spaces. Employee groups that you would set up in Global HR are now called, in S3 are now called custom groups. And then your HR10 history that you pick and choose what you want to be tracked on your HR10 and 10.2 are now saved in audit logs, and you don't have to pick and choose. Everything that happens in the system is tracked there. And then no equivalent in S3 for the as of date. This is a little button that you can set from the start menu to tell the system what date to look at, so you can roll it forward or roll it backwards and see the system as it is or will be at that date. So it's a good way to get point in time reporting. So what is goal management? Goal management is a module within talent management that lets you set up, create, and manage goals for employees within your organization and your organization units. There are organizational goals, which are kind of like strategic, organization-wide goals, maybe like increase sales, decrease turnover. And then there's employee goals, which can relate or align with organizational goals. There's ways to measure goals, and I think Melissa will hit on that a little bit later, different measurement strategies there. Action plans. I might even be getting into my next slide here a little bit here with some of these definitions, so I'm just going to skip ahead. Goal categories, I'll just skip down to action plans actually. Action plans are what you set up to create how you're going to achieve a goal. So if I say, my goal is to pass a certification test, my action plan will be to probably first sign up for that test, and then second, take some courses to prepare me for it, study for it. So an action plan is how to get to achieving that goal. Start back at the top here. Your organizational goals, like I said, those are strategic goal, organization-wide goals that really everyone in the organization will benefit from. Your employee goals, you can either create these yourself as the employee, or a manager can assign them to you for you to complete as an employee personal goal. Goal categories, this is a way to categorize or to group goals into certain categories. Topics, right. Yeah. So one would be like a sales goal or something to that effect, or
and maybe if you're in healthcare, critical care.
Right.
So everybody, all of your nurses, or all different positions that might have critical care as a goal, will get cascaded that goal. So that you can group them, so it doesn't necessarily have to go to everybody in one position, or everybody who reports up through that supervisor. They can be assigned as a group to different populations.
Yep. And then similarly, we have goal types, which is another way to categorize your goals. But we see this set up more as kind of like short-term, long-term type of things, whereas your goal category is going to, like Melissa said, really help you to push specific goal categories into the relevant employees or resources for those goals. Goal years are, it's basically a year, like a calendar year that you set up for a goal. So if you have the same goal, but you fill it out or you complete it each year, sometimes it'll overlap. So you just want to make sure you specify that year so that you can, the percentage complete won't like overlap for those two different years. And in addition, you do need your goal years for your action plans. So anytime you're setting up an action plan, you need the year defined on the goal to show where you are within that action plan for completion. And then Cascade, which Melissa just said, I believe, is the term for pushing down goals, whether it's at the organization level or at the organization unit level, pushing it down to the applicable resources, whether it's based on categories or a custom group or something to that effect.
And that can happen through both the HR administrator who develops the organizational goals, or through the manager to cascade down to their own employees.
So this is just a screenshot for where you would go to set up goals. This is the administrator process board. So when you log into Canvas, which is the new, kind of portal for those of you who aren't too familiar with Global HR, when you log in, there'll be different icons over on the left-hand side. One for administrator, and the administrator role is going to have access to set up each types of these goals and also access the reports. So this is where you're going to go to set up any type of goal. You can see it's separated out by organization, resource, and then any kind of results that need to be defined.
We talk about how do you measure goals. You can set that up yourself as an organization to measure each of your employees. So it's not something that's stock out of Lawson. There are some templates that you can use. But if you are currently using a rating scale that you like, whether it is a point rating scale, whether it is a excellent, needs improvement, that type of rating scale, whatever it is you're currently using in whatever system you're using to manage goals, you can move those over into for performance and goal management. Here we've set up what these ranges look like for a 5-point measure of 5-point rating scale. We will kind of talk about some of the other modules that use the same data. When we're talking about other modules, we're talking about other talent management offerings, as well as some of the things straight out of Global HR. So when I've set up this rating scale, I can now tie that to performance appraisals, and I can also tie it to compensation. So if through performance, which we'll touch upon a little bit later, somebody's goal, they've gotten maybe a 4.5 on a specific goal, and that helps them tie up to a certain number on their performance appraisal. Now you can tie what their compensation is to that number. Or if I want to do a bonus incentive based on a goal. So maybe going back to Jackie's example of a sales goal, maybe they have hit their sales goal for the year. You can tie this rating level to merit or to a bonus, incentive bonus. Go ahead. Okay, so this is the administrator, as Jackie was talking about the canvas earlier. We will be going into either the goals section or the performance section as a back office HR user to set these things up. This has to be set up before you want to push anything out. So a manager can't just go in and decide to create goals unless they're available to use. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the menus. Sure.
They wanted to understand the difference between action requests and stated actions in GHR was all personnel actions in S3. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So they're essentially the same. The action requests in Global HR are delivered by just out of the box based on what in forcing everybody uses personnel action, the types of personnel actions everybody used in S3. Termination actions, pay change actions, hire, position.
Yep.
There's essentially I think about 5 actions that everybody does.
Yep.
And you may name them, you may have 3 things for this one action, but it's essentially a pay change. So they've tied all those together and delivered them out of the box. You are able to edit them using IPA, but they will map. There's an LT screen on the S3 side that allows you to map what those action requests do to your personnel actions in S3 when it affects payroll, benefits, or absence, one of your 3 batch processing modules that are still running in S3. If you're off of benefits and absence in S3, you'll still map those personnel action requests to your personnel actions that affect pay to go over to your payroll system, like terminations, new hires, those types of things. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Back to this, we're going to go into your goal management. I think Jackie touched on a couple of these topics. So you would go in to set up your organizational goals. Let's go ahead and get to the next one. And this is a screen that allows an administrator to mass create the goals they want to push out to the organization. So you can see here, you can create a custom group as an eligibility group that you want to push these goals out to, or if you want to go to specific resources. So maybe it's your C-suite, or we all know that C-suites probably don't get performance appraisals and goals, but you might have just specific employees or smaller organization that you want to give certain goals to, or you can push them out by position, by location, or org unit. So you have a lot of flexibility in where those goals go. And then you can create templates. So yearly, you don't have to create those same goals. You create your new plan year for them, or your new goal year. I'm thinking of better with your goals. Once the goal year is over after your appraisal, or if you don't tie it to an appraisal, once it's over, you start a new goal year, and you'll have the same goals, essentially, and maybe some new ones. And then here are where you put all of the details. And then once you submit it, it uses, again, IPA engine in the background to push everything out to the employee group that you selected. Cascading, this is just showing, again, what level. Jackie was talking about the idea of an organizational unit at the beginning. Your organization is just like your company in S3, and your organization units, while they don't have to be process level department and that's it, right. You can have multiple organization units nested underneath each other and kind of leveled out at the same level. You would select which organization unit you want to push it down to, and it would cascade to that level and everything that nests up to that level. Okay.
So Melissa just touched on all the administrator functions that a goal administrator can do. Now we're going to talk about goal leaders. This is a different type of goal action taker. So to have this role, or to complete these actions, you need to have this security role right here. And what a goal leader is it's an employee who is kind of assigned to a specific goal category, and they are not really allowed to do all of the administrator like setup items that Melissa touched on, but they can assign those already set up goals to certain groups of people based on category, or cascade them down based on that category. So they essentially have similar functionality as the administrators, but they can't just create from new. They have to only use the goals that are assigned to their goal categories. So again, they can create assign organizational goals or employee goals as well. This is the goal leader process board. You can tell there's less on here than there was on the administrator process board, but same kind of thing. If you do have the goal leader role, and that's part of your job duties, it's going to appear on the canvas. And once you open that icon up, these are the things that you will be able to do. So you can still look at your organizational goals, resource goals, mass create them, and look at your reporting and results as well. This is for managers. So this is the manager view. So so this is our manager process board, and behind that we have the whole canvas here. So I've gone to the manager icon somewhere over here and opened this up. And me as a manager, these are two of my direct reports. So as a manager, I can come in under my staff, open this up, and select one of my direct reports here and suggest a new goal for them. So similar to the goal leader, but the manager now has the ability to assign it directly to some of their direct reports. And then once the direct report, the employee receives that, they can approve it or reject it with comments, send it back to the manager to let them know, hey, that's a lofty goal, I don't know if I can do that, or hey, I think I can do that, but maybe without this piece, or sure, I'm game, let's get that done. So maybe another screenshot here. Yeah, so this is, again, another look at one of my direct reports, Richard Penniman. If at his profile, this is kind of like the HR 11 right here. So all of the tabs that are normally across the top are going to be on the left-hand side right here. And there's a goals tab. Right now, he doesn't have any, but this is another place I could go to suggest a new goal. And you'd be able to see the goal, the category and type, and then the start date and the due date, and if it's been approved by him or not, and then any weights assigned to it, and the comp ratios there as well. So as an employee, now if I'm going in as myself and looking at my own goals, so this is the employee process board. Again, I've come over here, selected my employee icon. This process board pops up. And I went into manage goals right here. And this is my goal menu. A goal that did I create this one myself? I either created this for myself and had my manager approve it, or my manager assigned it to me. But if I wanted to create it myself, I can do this request new goal right here. Once I've finished it, I say I'm done, I passed the test or whatever it is, select the goal, and then select complete. And then my manager, I believe is Melissa in the system actually, will get that notification saying that Jackie has completed this goal, and then I can provide proof for how that has been completed as well.
And I kind of want to step in real quick and talk about what you're seeing here. So we are using a version 11 sandbox, but this may look a little different than what you've been seeing from Infor right now. And they're showing a lot of their cloud suite applications, and they're showing some of the HTML5, which goes on a website instead of using the rich client, which is what we're showing here. So you'll see a couple of different versions of what things look like, but all of the way everything works is essentially the same across the board.
And by the same token, I have it set up to be this white presentation, which in hindsight may actually not be great for a presentation. But you may have seen it in like a blue or a red or a black, and that's just a simple changing the schema from your start menu here. So if this doesn't look different because you've seen it in a different color, again, it's the same functionality. It just might look a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But good point. So this is, if I wanted to create a goal for myself, I would go in, suggest a new goal, and my goal here is reduce ER wait time. So I've selected the type, it's a performance goal. The category here is for service. Start and end dates, you can put in descriptions and then an expected result. Any weights that you want to add to it, you can put that in here and select progress for what's going on with the goal, whether it's just started, in progress, or completed. And these buttons on the bottom here, this is for SMART rating. So if you can't read that, it says specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And these are just, you can select these if they are relevant to the goal, and it's just for measuring how closely this goal aligns with SMART rating. So the SMART doesn't actually line up with any of your weights on the back end. It just lines up, or it just shows you how much this aligns with the SMART rating itself, the SMART objective. Comments here, if you want to come back in and make any edits or add any comments here, maybe I want to put in a comment to my manager. And then if there's any goals that are similar, so they're aligned with this goal, I can put those in on that tab there. And then I can hit submit here, and that goal is then going to go to my manager for them to approve it, maybe make some edits to it, and then approve it. And then it'll be an active goal for me to complete. So here's another goal. And see, this is an example of the different colors, actually. So this is the blue scheme, so that's why it looks different from slide to slide. So here's another goal for decrease onboarding time. Once it's submitted and entered, my manager, so this is Melissa's view right here, I'm one of her direct reports down here. She can come down and click on me and see this goal that I've added and when it has started, when it ended, and when it was, or what percent complete it is right now.
Which is really nice because as a manager, if I see a goal is 40% complete and my appraisals or the employee's appraisal is going to be in a month, I know right there they're either not updating their goals, they're not going to hit the goal. Right. Nothing's going to be a surprise to me as a manager. It should not be a surprise to me. I can see these kinds of metrics along the way as the goal year and the performance appraisal year go through.
So this is an action plan email template. So like I said before, when you submit a goal or receive a goal, you can create an action plan for how you're going to get that done. And this, for example, is an email template that you would send out as a manager, maybe, to tell the resource this goal has been assigned to you. These are the things that you can do to get this done. So maybe you'd want to hyperlink out to some training classes, some reading material, something to that effect. But this is kind of going into a bit of a deeper or a different topic, but any template that you can create in Global HR, you have these selectable fields. So you can tell, or if you can see, these are in brackets, the resource email, manager email, and then the resource first name right here. So anything that you want to send to like mass groups of people, you can select these, what do they call them? They're like
variables.
Variables, thank you. I almost said factors. Variables to pull that information directly off the employee to which it is relevant. So it's kind of a quick way to get that done rather than typing, Dear Melissa, you have a new goal. So this would be, this is, the action email template, and then you just save it, and you can reuse these templates too. After you've already created them, you can come back to them and reuse them and edit them as needed.
And these are, again, all delivered out of the box with standard Global HR. These happen to be goal templates that would come with the goal module, but all the email templates, the variables, that type of ability is available throughout Global HR and delivered, and you can use the templates that Infor delivers with some kind of stock wording in there,
right.
Or you can take that stock wording, make it your own, or create your own wording based on whatever your organizational policies or handbooks say for that particular piece.
So for the goal approval process, if an employee receives a goal from a manager, the employee will be notified that a goal has been assigned to them. And then if the employee creates a goal for themselves, the manager will be notified that they have created a goal. So here we have, again, this is my profile, my goal here. This is a goal that's been assigned to me. So I can accept it or reject it, and I can reject all or accept all. And then once it's accepted or rejected, once it's accepted, it'll be an active goal then that I can begin working on. If I reject it or reject it with comments, it'll get pushed back to Melissa or to whoever my manager is for them to edit it or just push it back down to me to be completed again.
And all this is IPA happening in the back end using your supervisory structure as the process. I guess it kicks off based on who her manager is to give me any kind of information about whether she approved or rejected. As a manager, you can turn on notifications that I, as a manager, would get an email or notification when she accepts it, every point of the process. Same thing with the appraisal process. Or if those are too many notifications, you can turn them down and just decide which ones that are relevant or a manager really wants to see.
So
and an employee.
Question.
Sure.
Slipping back to goals, we noticed that using weights on goals, we always have to use 100% for each goal weight. Have you noticed this? Or can you have them evenly distributed weights? So say you have 4 goals, which would each be 25% in weight.
Depending on how your organization does things. So if all of them are equally important, because I think that's a different way of thinking it. I guess if you see it at 100%, you think you have to have all of them completed by 100% to have that goal done. The weighting really should say, when you're looking at your position or your action plan or career path, whatever that may be, how does this goal affect that? So if you have a customer service one and you are in some sort of, maybe you're in an HR role where customer service is pretty big, you might have that at a 50 or 60% while you have maybe dealing with all of your plan vendors at 10%, because that's something an HR person may have to do. They either get it done or they don't. If they don't do it, that's an issue for your appraisal. But it doesn't. The goal of that really doesn't apply to their position as big as something like customer service, ensuring that they're speaking with their employees, ensuring that that your employees are happy. So you would want to weight the goals that affect your position or your competencies a little higher than just that 100% across the board to all of them. You would expect that they would attain all of their goals, so all of them should be at 100% by the end of the goal year, and I would say weight them based on which ones are a little more important than the others. And then when you plug that into your appraisal, your goals as a whole will have a weight against the rest of the criteria on your appraisal. If you want to break them out, if you want to just have your 8 goals or whatever it may be, 6 goals as your appraisal criteria, at that point you can rate each goal at a different percentage. Maybe even there you still want to weight them and what's the most important. So I would definitely keep it weighted with the importance as opposed to doing 100% with each. Okay.
Any more? All done?
Okay.
Next, I just want to hit how goals specifically integrates with some other modules in talent management. First, you have your compensation management module here. So with comp, you can associate a bonus check for any goals that have been achieved. So if you want to reward, like Melissa was saying earlier, if you want to reward an employee for achieving a goal, you can pull that information in with the comp module and pay out that bonus check. In addition, you can use goals within your performance management module. So we're going to get into the performance module a little bit later, but basically as you're completing an appraisal, if you need to pull in some goals and to see whether the employees or managers have achieved those goals, you can pull that in and you can evaluate those goals based on whether they have completed it or not and complete your performance appraisal relevant to those goals for those employees. Development, so if part of an employee's development plan is to complete goals or to attain goals or to start taking on more goals, you can link this to the development module to show that they're kind of growing in their role, ready to move into the next role as well. And then global HR. So global HR, again, this is our base foundation. This is like your organization units, your work types, your statuses, your resources, anything on the base level. You need all that set up before you can do any of this. So it's kind of obvious to say, but you do need all that kind of stuff set up before you can use goals or performance.
And that's a great point, because a lot of people want to drive moving to global HR with performance and goals. And they're wondering if there is a way they can implement only performance or only goals or only both without global HR, so they can at least get their appraisals out of the new system. Unfortunately, you can't. You would be able to set up the most basic in global HR to get it to work. There is a feature or an option in global HR where you can still use your S3 as your system of record. So you can finagle the system to use performance and goals, but as a best practice, we wouldn't really recommend that, just because There's a lot of work in setting up global HR. You don't want to dump what's in your S3 system straight over to global HR just to get a module working. If you do get performance working, there's going to be no drive really to go back and fix global HR. You'll just build upon whatever basic stuff you have when you need to go to version 11 after version 10 is decommissioned. And that might be another thing we touch on. This is all version 11. Version 11 is live in global HR. GA'd has been for the last almost 2 years now. This is the version of Lawson HCM that you'll move to after your version 10. If you're in the midst of an upgrade right now, or if you've just upgraded, version 11 is not GA'd for financials or supply chain, but it is for global HR. So if you're thinking, I don't think this is for me, this is the roadmap. This is the direction of where HR is going to go after your current version. So that being said.
Lastly here, or probably second to lastly maybe, this is a view of the employee space from a web browser. So this is not the canvas. This is if I, as an employee, logged into my employee space from Internet Explorer or Chrome or whatever. I just want to show you the whole screen of this, just so you have a view of it. Some different things I can access down here. And in addition, I have my goals as well. So if I wanted to check my goals out, maybe I don't use the canvas. Maybe I'm not really like a back office user, but I still have goals. Or if I wanted to access my goals when I don't have access to the canvas, I can come into employee space right here and access my goals and update them if I need to. Goal reporting. So we have an administrator here. These are all the administrator goals that can be, or reports that can be run. These are out of the box. You can, of course, create additional reports as needed. But these are some of the out-of-the-box reports available to the administrator. The goal leader, so these are the 2 goal leader reports that come out of the box that are available to them. And this is a report builder right here, so you can edit these reports. And this is just showing the 2 different dimensions that I want to include in the report here.
Okay, now we're going to shift some gears here and go over to your performance management side. So we were talking about goals. We started with that because essentially that might be a building block for your performance appraisal form. So what is performance management? This is where you can maintain all of your employees' skills. It's going to build from your global HR based on what position the employee is assigned to. So if you have your competencies defined, it will pull that into the performance module. If you've got your job description, so some responsibilities and roles, that can pull over into your performance module. Any of the development plans, some of those other modules that we were touching on that use the same data, all that can be pulled in when it's set up in global HR as criteria to build out your performance appraisal. So you can also use user-defined criteria. So you use your system setup as well as anything else that you want to review your employee on throughout the year. Okay. So the criteria pieces, I'm going to get to what the form is going to look like, but it's basically building out structured with a header, telling the employee exactly what their appraisal is and what the performance review is and what they need to do to complete it. But then you pull in all the criteria that you want to rate your employee on, or you want your managers to rate their employees on. Those criteria can include the competencies if those are built out in global HR. Competency model, kind of like we were talking about goal categories earlier, a competency model is where you can build a core set of competencies for a specific role. So if you have leadership competencies, you can put all of those into a competency model for leadership, and then you can assign that to all of your leader type positions. So your managers, your directors, any of your other executives could get this leadership competency model, and now they already have possibly 5 competencies already assigned to their position. So it's a nice, easy way to push like competencies out to like positions. You don't have to have all your competency set up. You don't have to have all your competency models set up. Even if you decide to just do it for certain level positions in your organization, you can start there and then build as your plan years continue or your performance appraisal years continue. And then at some point, everybody will have a few core competencies on their or on their position, or maybe some of them you don't really need. You're not going to use that as a criteria to review them. Your knowledge, skills, abilities also straight from your global HR defined and attached to your positions, your job and position components, and then if you decide to bring any goals in, if you're using the goal management module, and if you're using the development management module, any of those activities that you've set up and assigned to your employees. Activities would be something, just kind of going back, activities would be anything that's maybe not goal related and not responsibility on their position. So maybe it is, if they're getting a certification, maybe it's some shadowing time with a mentor. Maybe they, before they can get a specific certification, they have to have a certain amount of hours doing something. So maybe one of the development activities might be shadowing somebody else or working with a mentor, and that goes toward completing that goal, but that is part of their development activity.
Some of the prereqs for using performance management, again, it's very similar to what was on the goal slide too, but global HR, like Melissa just said, you need to set up most of those things. You definitely need to have your resources, your organization structure, and then if you want, you can set up the competencies, your KSAs too. Organizational structure, resources, jobs, and positions. So everything, all the competencies and knowledge, skills, abilities, you can assign that at the employee level, and then you can also assign it at the job and position level so that you can see if the employees assigned to those jobs and positions have the skills that are required for those jobs and positions or preferred for those. So that's part of how you would look at their performance, see if they or have achieved those things that they need to, or have obtained those skills or abilities that they need to. And then again, competency models, just a way to group those things. So if you maybe have excellence as a competency, and then there's certain ways to achieve that excellence, you can create each of those ways as competencies, and then the competency module would be like this umbrella of excellence or leadership, like the previous example.
Okay, so we had some terminology that we went over on the goal side. Here is your performance management terminology. Your rating scales are what you use to rate your criteria and your different criteria, your goals, your activities. Again, kind of like that 5-point, 3-point, alphanumeric, however you decide to rate your employees would be built in those rating scales. Your rater types. So who is doing the appraisal? Do you have multiple people doing the appraisal for one employee? Is it going to be your direct supervisor, possibly peer rater, employee, a self-rating? Those would be your types. Your criteria is, we talked about before, your competencies, your position, responsibilities, all of those types of things that will be built together or assigned on the appraisal form in order for you to give them a rating. Your notifications or your appraisal criteria groups, same thing like the goal criteria groups. If you want to bucket some criteria together to be able to assign out on a performance appraisal group, you would be able to put those together in a group. And then your notifications. The same type of process that we talked about with the goals. You create an appraisal form and you assign that to your employees. Employee gets a notification that they've been assigned an appraisal, and they have to go out there and just acknowledge that they've received it. So not that, again, at the end of it, not that they're accepting the rating, but they've acknowledged that they've seen the rating, they've acknowledged that they've received the performance appraisal, and then once they've finished a piece, the manager would get a notification to let them know that the next part of the appraisal process is ready for review. This also happens if there's a peer rater. Manager needs to know when the self and the peer ratings are done so they can compile those with their manager rating or appraisal. Okay, so the roles. When I'm talking about roles here, we go into landmark security or your global HR security. We haven't really touched on that, but there is different security that comes out of landmark. It's not using your current LS security. Sorry for those of you who have gone through a security project in the last couple of years. But this is specifically for landmark and specifically for global HR right now. In order for a manager to see any of these appraisal tasks, they must have a role. So we've got the managers here. They must have a role that allows them to do performance reviews. Maybe it's not your managers that do performance reviews. Maybe it's a different type of person who has no direct reports. We see that in healthcare sometimes. And that person, as long as they have this performance appraisal or performance management role, they are able to see those tasks for whichever employees you need them to see them for. And you would assign that out. The HR administrator already innately has this HR performance security. If it's just kind of like a super user, they would be able to set up any of the talent management modules that are available with Global HR. They would define all of those components. So kind of if you liken it to your HR 00 through HR 10 or BN 00 through BN 10, all of those setup screens that you have to put the components together in order to use your benefits plans or benefits module, or in order to use your PA module. All of those menus or selects that you use, something has to be defined there, and those are usually in the setup screens. So same thing happens. Those performance components are set up by the administrator, and they also are building these appraisal forms for the organization. You can build as many appraisal forms as you like as an organization, because not all employees are appraised on the same types of things, and not all employees need to have as much criteria. So maybe one group of your organization has 8 different criteria they need to be appraised on, while you have another one that just has 3. You can create as many forms as you'd like, and you can either push them out to the managers, or you can make them available for the managers to select which form they'd like to use for their employees. Resources. No, it's okay. I just remembered I talked about managers and administrator. So as a resource, again, they must have the performance module. So if you've got just Global HR and you haven't purchased performance and goals yet, you will have to load or layer those performance security roles onto your employee, onto your manager, and administrator will already have it, in order for them to start seeing those tasks and those menus. So as a resource, they would go in and do their self-review, and if they are selected as a peer reviewer for any of their colleagues, they would also get those types of notifications and get those reviews to fill out. Okay? We'll talk about the integration as we did with the goals. We are using the GHR structure, so again, all of that has to be, not all of it, as Jackie was saying. You could just build a little, bring just your positions over in your HR structure. You definitely need that supervisory structure built out, or whomever is going to be doing those reviews, they need to be put into the system with those reviewees reporting up to them, so they're able to see those reviews or assign those reviews to those employees. Your resources are obviously, they need to be moved over to your Global HR. You have to have those to assign the appraisals to. You have to have your jobs and positions built out so you can review your employee against what their position or job is. And then we've talked about these competencies and models prior. So what builds out your performance rating? If you're using self-appraisal and if you're using peer appraisals, you would pull those in. If not, you can, in the setup screen, there is a checkbox that you can select which of these you want to use. If you do not use peer reviewers, you do not check that, and that is not part of the overall score. Your manager's appraisals, and this is by review cycle. So if you happen to have multiple review cycles in a year for possibly new hires, you could set up different types of forms for maybe a 2-month review or a 90-day review, and then maybe a 6-month review. And if you want to take those 2 scores and be able to use them together with their 1-year review, you can kind of calculate all of those and create a rating for that employee's first year.
So appraisal reassignment. This is a really cool feature where you can take the appraisal and reassign it. And there are multiple reasons why you might want to do that. So maybe I previously reported to Keith, and now I'm being moved to report to Melissa. But Keith knows me a lot better because I worked for him all year. I haven't worked for Melissa that long. So Melissa might take my appraisal and reassign it to Keith because he oversaw all my duties for the past year. Maybe my manager is on vacation and this appraisal needs to get done, so you can reassign it to maybe an upline manager. So a direct manager, my new direct manager would be Melissa, and then the upline manager would be Melissa's supervisor. So maybe if you want to reassign that to an upline manager, maybe they don't know me as well, but they can still get it done. You can also assign it to the previous manager's upline manager as well. Let me think of another example. So the absences, if there's been a change in jobs. Can you think of any other example?
We kind of talked about sometimes they're administrators that do
Right,
these. So
right.
it's not necessarily a manager that does them just because the manager doesn't have time to do them. Again,
Exactly.
in healthcare, when you have people on the floor managing a whole slew of other things, they don't have time to do those appraisals. So you can reassign to an administrator and let them work together in getting those completed.
Yep. Or if there's maybe like a shift supervisor that I see all the time, maybe my direct manager wouldn't know really how to fill this out, they can reassign it to the night shift manager. So that's a neat feature so that you don't have to be, you can kind of move this over to the more applicable rater.
Okay, some of the setup tasks that have to happen for performance management are defining your email templates. As I said, a lot of notifications are driven through this process, and in order for those to work, you have to turn them on, and you have to decide which ones you want to turn on, and then you have to decide what you want them to say. So, we've got one here. Same concept as goals. You're using your variables to push out to whomever you need to speak with or let them know that another part of the appraisal process is complete. This is most likely stock wording that Infor has delivered in the template. So if you don't want to think of, 20 different email template wording types, you can use what Infor is using and throw your organization name in there somewhere, whatever you'd like to do. And then, you assign which templates to which organization. So if you have multiple departments and maybe, your administration has certain wording, but then the field has different wording, you create 2 different email templates for completed, but they are assigned to whichever part of the organization they need to go to. That way the wording isn't super generic across your whole company.
So this is the same header, just a different view of how you would get to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, same. Yep. Okay, so this is what the notification actually looks like. So you've set that up in the back end. You are either employee or manager. In this case, this is to Jackie. She is Richard's manager, and it's telling her there's that little stock wording in there that there is a review available for her to complete. This is nice because not everybody goes into their self-service every day to see what's sitting there waiting for them. If employees or managers don't normally go in there, this will drive them to go in when they need to go because there is an item waiting for their attention.
This is an actual email that I received too, so it does work.
That's 2015.
The dates are a little out of sync here. I'm really overdue on this,
yes.
But I did receive this email.
Okay, so we talked about the approval process also before with IPA. Again, using your supervisory structure to determine what part of the performance evaluation is complete or the appraisal is complete, who does it need to notify next for their attention. So when they accept a goal or they accept their appraisal, they have out-of-the-box approval process that will work. And then also when a performance level is hit, there is an out-of-the-box IPA approval process or notification process that happens at that time.
So we do have a couple of questions.
Timing.
I've been saving them up for you.
Okay.
One is, can you have more than one set of goals and evaluations for resources that have more than one position.
Yes, you can define goals. So it'll all hit the resources goal. I don't want to try to find that again, but if you can remember the resource view, and then under that like goal tab on the left-hand side, they'll all go under there. But you can assign, if the different positions have different managers can push those different goals down to that employee. So yes, that is possible.
The second question would be from Jana, and that's, are other raters able to see the employee goals to comment on them in version 11?
No, right?
Goals?
No, yeah.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be until that gets put into the appraisal form and another rater would see the appraisal and they could see the goals in the appraisal, but
Yeah, and it's all going to be specific
Yeah.
to that employee. So only really the manager or any other manager that has been given access to that employee would really see that information.
caveat to that, you can do anything with security and configuration console. So if you need other raters to see goals throughout
Yeah.
the year, you could build a custom role that would give them access to just that, and then you would give them one of the, like a manager self-service or a manager role where they see the manager process board or menu, and all they would see in there is performance. So they wouldn't see anything else about that direct report or about that employee but their goals. So there's a way, not out of the box, but yes, it can be done.
Perfect. So just, I'll mention, and by the way, if you do have questions that didn't get answered or you need more details, please feel free to send us an email to webinars@rpic.com. We'll be happy to answer them or set up a free conference call.
Do we have any, no others?
Or if you can read this, feel free to reach out to us too.
So I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I want to thank Ms. Jackie Dudas, Ms. Melissa Olson. I also want to point out that they have another webinar on today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific, on 10 do-it-yourself projects for Lawson HR
S3.
Payroll
Current.
S3.
Current.
So if you like this webinar, I understand it's an excellent presentation. We're very excited about it. Hope to see you at 3 o'clock. You can register under rpic.com/webinars. Thank you.